In just a few years, Leon Rose has pulled off one of the most improbable rebuilds in NBA history, transforming a once forgotten and laughed at Knicks team into true contenders. How did he do it? From shrewd trades to bold signings, Rose's strategic genius is rewriting the Knicks narrative. Won't believe how Rose turned this team around in record time. When Leon Rose took over as president of basketball operations in March 2020, the Knicks were near the bottom of the NBA standings. The team finished the 19-20 season with a 21-45 record, sitting 12th in the Eastern Conference before the COVID-19 pandemic shortened the season. The roster featured key players like Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, and underperforming players like Kevin Knox and Dennis Smith Jr., and the recently departed Marcus Morris via a trade for draft capital Mo Harkless. The franchise was mired in dysfunction, lacking a clear direction after years of poor management decisions, and more importantly, Knicks fans were tired of empty promises. The only thing Rose needed was time. Nothing about this is easy or quick, so I ask for your continued patience, Rose wrote in an email to season ticket holders. What I promise you in return is that I will be honest and forthright. We will develop a plan that makes sense both to jumpstart our short-term growth and ensure our long-term success. But could Rose really be the one to break this cycle, especially with these asks so early out the gate? The job was daunting, especially with a team in New York and their fan base, but Rose wasn't your typical NBA executive. He spent 2 decades as a top player agent at Creative Artist Agency, or known as CAA, representing legends like LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, and Chris Paul, and many more. This experience gave him an unrivaled understanding of how players think, what motivates them, and, more importantly, how to build lasting relationships. So, from the boardrooms of CAA to the high-pressure stage of Madison Square Garden, Rose would defy expectations at every turn, proving doubters wrong with each carefully crafted deal. But Rose's hire as president of basketball ops was initially met with mixed reactions. The media were concerned, not coming as a former front office executive. There was skepticism about whether he had the experience needed to lead a successful franchise rebuild. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski noted the unusual hire, but acknowledged Rose's deep player relationships and connections, which could help attract talent to New York. Still, many analysts questioned whether a former agent, no matter how powerful, could navigate the complexities of managing an NBA team. One hire did signify a turning point in the player-first culture for the New York Knicks, and that was Rose hiring his former CAA associate, William Worldwide West Wesley. Known for his extensive and powerful connections within the NBA and entertainment industries, he gained a reputation as an influential figure and behind-the-scenes deal-maker, often acting as a liaison between players, coaches, and organizations. Rose didn't have much time to make impactful changes before the season was paused in March and later concluded in July. However, the final piece to this team to lead this rebuild was his first focus on the court, and that came in the form of a coach. The overhaul of the coaching staff was a clear need after David Fizdale's mid-season firing, Mike Miller stepping in as an interim head coach to end the 19-20 season. He hired another former CIA client in Tom Thibodeau as a head coach in July in 2020. Thibodeau had a reputation as a defensive mastermind with a track record of success in both Boston, Chicago, and Minnesota, and his hiring was seen as a culture-changing move. Rose would declare in a statement, "Tom Thibodeau is a proven winner who gets the most out of the players and teams that he has coached. He will bring leadership, accountability, and hardworking mentality to our organization." And honestly, there's not a better suited coach to be heading the Knicks than Thibodeau. With a defensive and accountability mindset, along with a championship pedigree in place, now the groundwork was laid, the time for Rose to shift his focus onto the actual roster itself. Everyone looked to Rose in his first NBA draft. The Knicks were in the lottery due to their poor previous season results. Rose took a big swing by selecting the hometown kid, Obi Toppin, with the 8th overall pick. While the pick raised eyebrows due to the Knicks already having Julius Randle at power forward, Toppin's athleticism and potential appeal were undeniable. However, the more crucial pick would come later. The big value move here was drafting Emmanuel quickly. The Knicks originally had the 27th pick that came via the Marcus Morris trade, but Rose orchestrated a trade with the Utah Jazz, trading back with the 23rd pick for the 25th and the 33rd picks, and with the 25th pick selected Emmanuel Quickly, a sharpshooting guard out of Kentucky who immediately became a fan favorite. The full trade details are quite complicated, which seems to be a staple of Rose's transactions. So for the purpose of the rest of this video, and to save time, along with my voice, I'll focus on the top line of each significant deal. One thing is for sure, Rose would squeeze as much as he can out of each deal, whether it be salary relief or a future second rounder. As you can see, this is just the Quickly deal. In free agency, Rose Rose bucked fans' wishes and signed Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, and the loathed Elfrid Payton with some veteran stability. Although not a great free agency for a buyer's market due to the lack of star names, this is the first indication that would see the patience of Rose and willingness to build on culture. The first big trade came mid-season in February 2021 when he chose to reunite Derrick Rose with coach Tom Thibodeau, sending Dennis Smith Jr. and a second-round pick to Detroit. This move stabilized the Knicks' backcourt, with Derrick Rose's veteran presence along with Julius Randle, who would lead the team in every major stat on the way to the NBA's Most Improved Player award. RJ Barrett took a leap in his sophomore season, averaging 17 points per game. These moves were initially viewed as modest, with skepticism about whether the Knicks had enough talent to make a playoff run, but the low-risk, high-reward moves, focusing on depth rather than star power, helped drive the Knicks to their first playoff appearance since 2013. The Knicks would end the season with a 41-31 record, clinching the 4th seed. However, they went on to lose to the Hawks in the first round of the playoffs, 1-4. Despite the disappointing exit in the playoffs, Rose's initial approach of evaluating the talent already on the roster rather than making sweeping changes immediately looked to have paid off, given the turnaround in results both in record and player performance compared to the previous season. You can almost pinpoint this as the moment where the other executives and media around the league noticed that this Knicks team could be a problem in the future. Finally, a common sense head of this team willing to build patiently, it didn't look like the Knicks were an easy team to fleece in a deal anymore. After a successful 2020-2021 season, Rose made bold moves in the offseason. Not as flashy as fans wanted though, with the likes of DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso to be had in free agency, he stayed steady with his plan. He signed Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier to bolster the backcourt. Walker, a Bronx native, was supposed to be a homecoming story after his buyout from OKC. His knee issues limit his impact as originally feared by most fans before the signing. Fournier, acquired in a sign-in trade, bought in on a 4-year, $78 million deal, was widely questioned at the time, and he did show some flashes in shooting, but ultimately struggled on defense, fell out of long-term plans quite quickly. These were seen as some big misses, but also showed a commitment to flexibility moving forward. Despite these misses, Rose kept building for the future, with hindsight now having a great draft with some more complex moves and typical Rose-style type deals. He drafted Quentin Grimes in the first round after a draft rights exchange with the Clippers, who quickly emerged as a versatile wing with defensive grit that looked to ease the pain of the Fournier signing, and also securing a diamond in the rough in Miles McBride in the second round at pick 36, which of course came via trade rights. We also seen Rose give up on the first homegrown talent in Kevin Knox. Rose had seen enough and sent Kevin Knox a conditional 2023 first round pick and a trade player exception to the Atlanta Hawks in exchange for another yet to reach their potential player in Cam Reddish. Lastly, a notable extension in re-signing Julius Randle to a 4-year, $117 million deal, solidifying him as the star despite top and steady progression, along with extending Mitchell Robinson, seeing if he can continue to reach towards his ceiling also. Although there were some positives, the season was a regression as the Knicks missed the playoffs, going 37-45. Rose had seen enough, and the assets and cap room now created was to be used over the next couple of years. He was gearing up. The turning point many felt came in the 2021 offseason. Rose went all in after clearing cap space by trading Nerlens Noel, Alec Burks, and second-round picks to the Detroit Pistons. This was to sign Jalen Brunson, coming off a stellar playoff run with the Dallas Mavericks. He would become the Knicks' primary playmaker. A 4-year, $104 million deal secured Brunson after the Mavericks had rumored to have lowballed Brunson on an extension in the previous season. A quick important note here to make on Brunson's contract was this was descending, meaning the yearly numbers decreased throughout the duration of the contract. A favorable move internally that, although it would only save a little in $1.3 million, this would pay off massively in the future, which we'll get to. Brunson's signing was questioned at first, but it wasn't just a move. It was a turning point in one of the greatest NBA rebuilds in recent memory. Knicks had a long-awaited player who could take control of a game, someone they can root for, and Brunson delivered. Many felt the Knicks overpaid for a role player, but as the Garden attendees would attest to and see nightly, Brunson was anything but. To be fair, we need to mention here what the league argued was tampering, given how Jalen Brunson's father Rick was on the coaching staff. It's hard to argue both for and against this in equal measure. Was Brunson not allowed to talk to his father because he coached another team at the time? Or was his relationship an easy backdoor for negotiation for the Knicks? Very gray area if we have ever seen one. The league acknowledged this and then stripped the Knicks of a 2025 second-round pick, which, to be clear, is a light punishment and suitable considering. But Brunson silenced critics immediately after putting on the blue and orange, putting up career-best numbers averaging 24 points and 6 assists per game and becoming the heart of the Knicks offense, and an emotional all-star selection would follow. The city gave back to him what he put in, and later Brunson would solidify his legendary status. But we'll also get to that in a bit. Brunson wasn't the only notable signing though. They also shored up the center position here, both by signing versatile big man Isaiah Hartenstein coming off a respectable season with the Clippers, and continued to honor Mitchell Robinson's development with a multi-year extension. Much like Brunson's, this would also descend in salary, offer similar savings like Brunson to the tune over the years of $1.3 million in cap savings. Once again, this will come into play later. Rose also rewarded RJ Barrett with his rookie scale extension, which would impact further negotiations coming up, and we'll get into those of course. A solid core was set, and we even seen some of the earlier moves pay off from Rose with the emergence of Emmanuel Quickley. Quickley stepped up as a key bench scorer, averaging 14.9 points and playing a vital role in closing games with his defense and shooting, turned into a serious Six-Man of the Year candidate. However, one of, and if not Rose's most underappreciated moves, came during this season. Near the trade deadline, Rose acquired Josh Hart from the Portland Trail Blazers in a 3-team deal where the Knicks' only outgoing of concern was Cam Reddish, who had fallen out of favor in the rotation and, evidently, future plans. Once again, a simple deal on the face, but very complex under in the details. Hart's hustle, rebounding, and versatility provided a mid-season spark, leading the Knicks to a 47-35 record. Hart represented the perfect player to fit next to Brunson and Randall, either off the bench or in the starting lineup. A rare move that the coach, fans, and the players loved. This team's identity was really formed. Back in the postseason, the Knicks won their first playoff series in a decade, defeating the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games in the first round. Jalen Brunson was instrumental, averaging 27.8 points in the series. Some added flavor for this series we need to mention is the off-season long trade saga about Cavs star Donovan Mitchell. Although heavily rumored to be intense and long negotiations between Leon Rose and Danny Ainge, GM of the Jazz, a deal for Mitchell's homecoming fell through due to high demand of extra picks that were requested by Ainge. This was to compensate for the poison pill contract of RJ Barrett and his extension. Ainge was in typical form here. He was also asking for Toppin and Quickley. Was this the deal Leon had been waiting for? On the face, it seemed so, but Knicks fans held their breath as Rose walked away from the trade and Donovan Mitchell was shipped to Cleveland. In the end, it wasn't a setback. It was actually a masterstroke of patience. Rose stuck to his guns despite tremendous fan and media pressure, which I don't think many GMs could have survived. I mean, a player of Mitchell's caliber indirectly asking to be traded to your team, it's not easy to just say no to. Just look at the Knicks previously handling the similar situation 10 years ago with the Carmelo Anthony deal. So not only was Rose hitting on the most moves he made and accumulating assets, he was also savvy enough to recognize when not to make the deal, something we don't really hear enough of in the league. Unfortunately, the Knicks were eliminated in the second round by the Miami Heat, but it was clear to all the Knicks were trending in the right direction under Rose's leadership now. By the 2023 draft, everyone was all eyes on the Knicks and how the front office would finish this rebuild. Rose now took his big gamble with Brunson, and it paid off. Not only was he, as they predicted, but was showing he could be even more, and their window was slowly opening with the floor general at the helm of the team. With no draft picks in this draft, Rose indicated early that this would be trade season. He would first move on from Obi Toppin, electing to send him to the Pacers for future draft capital in the form of 2 second-round picks. This both cleared up cap for further moves and elected the intent for now that Randall was the Knicks guy at the power forward spot. If you had been following Rose's moves closely, this wouldn't have come as a surprise. Toppin had enough of a chance to grow and wasn't seen to have reached the level needed to break into the rotation enough, much like Kevin Knox and Cam Reddish before him. The cap created in Toppin's departure was used to sign Dante DiVincenzo to a modest 4-year, $50 million deal. DiVincenzo, coming off a strong season with the Golden State Warriors, reunited with his former college teammates Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, all of them spending time on the 2016 Villanova National Championship team, and thus the nickname the Nova Knicks were born. DiVincenzo's shooting and defensive versatility added important depth to the Knicks rotation and proved to be more than just a chemistry fit. Aside from the complexity of his deals and timelines he had seemed to have with younger players in development, one crucial aspect of Rose's moves he made were that he always had his coach in mind. Tibbs being the first piece of his rebuild, the foundation if you will. No player was brought in against Tibbs' style, preference, or couldn't fit into a mold that Tibbs wanted. Most front offices have a vision of how they want to play and ask coaches and players to adapt to it with varied success. Rose was clever enough to maximize on personnel by building a team of players that suits his coach's cultural preference, whether they knew this or not. And when you start to view the team through this lens, it makes a lot more sense as to why they were seeing this success, and it wasn't just because they were talented players. Now, with a chest of future draft picks, some good tradable contracts along with some desirable young players, everyone was looking to what the Knicks would do for their big splash. Rose quickly secured his late round pick in Miles McBride. Juice, as he's known, had cracked Tibbs' rotation, earning consistent spot minutes off the bench due to his pest-like defense and high-energy shot about making. The deal was extremely team-friendly, with a 3-year, $12 million cost, but more importantly, would solve the potential headache in the upcoming free agency of teams trying to outbid the Knicks for his services. This was crucial with Leon's next big move in mind. It was at this time Rose opted to finally pull the trigger on a long-rumored move in late December, trading for OG Anunoby. The versatile wing had been whispered about being on the market since the offseason, but the Knicks and many teams balked at Toronto's original demand of 4 first-rounders, which is kind of absurd, but should highlight the ability of Rose to engage with GMs no matter how they feel about their players and their history with the Knicks. So, the Raptors initiating a rebuild mode, the Knicks opted to send RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and a 2024 second-round pick to the Toronto Raptors. In return, the New York Knicks acquired OG Anunoby along with forward Precious Achiuwa and guard Malachi Flynn. Analysts widely recognized the significance of the deal, sending the former lottery pick RJ Barrett to his hometown team along with Quickley to fill the position of need, and the Knicks acquiring a player like Anunoby, a standout two-way player with elite defensive capabilities and solid offensive output. He averaged around 16 points per game since the 2020 season. His fit within the Knicks system under Tom Thibodeau, a coach who emphasized defense, was seen as seamless. This move also cleared future cap space and sent them up for additional trades in the future through the use of OG Anunoby's bird rights. Not as blockbuster-ish as the OG trade, Rose then followed up in the same manner of clearing future space, prepping for a big splash by finally getting off Fournier's deal, along with Quentin Grimes for a steady, versatile veteran and Bojan Bogdanovic, and welcoming back Alec Burks, plus a trade player exception. This was a low-risk move that didn't disrupt the season and retained flexibility moving forward, whilst also helping the team. Many viewed the Knicks as the trade deadline winners, and it's hard to argue considering the season they were having with a 50-32 record finish, the second in the conference. The playoffs were exciting and solidified Brunson as the star he is, despite media criticism. But unfortunately riddled with injuries, we saw the Knicks limp out in the second round. Many thought with a fully healthy team, the Knicks may have pushed the then-be champion Celtics to their limit in a potential Eastern Conference Finals matchup. Regardless, everyone was left wondering, is Leon finished? Will they just run back as a healthy team next season? He still has a chest of future picks, some tradable contracts, and even a little wiggle room with some clever cap maneuvers to bolster this team for a run. Many rumors consistently floating around on forums and hot take talk shows. But let's break down the pivotal trades that sent shockwaves through the NBA. Even the most hopeful Knicks fans were surprised with what Rose managed in this offseason. But first, I want to take a look at the lay of the land to show you what he was dealing with heading in. The Knicks had 4 key players moving into free agency, with Precious Achiuwa, Alex Burks, Isaiah Hartenstein, and OG Anunoby. Obviously, the latter two being critical to the Knicks' rotation. OG was Leon's big move, in which he traded his best young players for, so there was no concern that the Knicks would not pay up for OG's return. I guess the concern lie with OG's long-term health and the ability of other teams to pay him, like their interdivision rivals, the Philadelphia 76ers. This gave OG the majority of the negotiating power. Despite the interest and rumors, OG was locked down on a 5-year, $210 million deal to return to the Knicks. Some say an overpay and potentially in the future a worrisome number, but remember, Leon is building for the coach and not the owner's wallet. Next would come the announcement of a Brunson extension, but not the typical max extension coming off a spectacular season. No, it was announced that Brunson would give a good faith discount to the team, which is seen as unprecedented in modern day NBA business. Obviously fans were ecstatic, and I'm sure will lobby for a Brunson statue outside of MSG. But for the non-cap smart out there, too long didn't read version is by signing now instead of next season, Brunson will lose out on roughly $113 million, but he would be eligible for a bigger extension come 2028. But in the meantime, it'll provide the Knicks with cap flexibility over the next 3 to 4 years, with the NBA's cap apron rules looming ever so close. Here are the numbers for those that want to have a look if it's your deal. Rose would continue the trend of his draft day trades and end with young French potential in Pekmi Diadiet and another second-round gem in Tyler Coek, who through early preseason footage is shaping up to be a steal at pick number 34. But what was notable about these two picks is Rose managed to negotiate their salary contracts paid in a way that does save some cap for the Knicks. Although not much, it's enough to help with what's about to happen. Next, he would add in a Precious Achiuwa agreement in which the Knicks declined Precious' option and brought him back on a cheaper deal to the tune of about $300,000 saving. In place, everything was looking positive, and we were heading towards a nice offseason where money was saved and some potential for a trade was happening. Until the Isaiah Hartenstein news broke. He would not be returning to the Knicks and opted to move West Coast to the contending OKC. Unfortunately, with the salary restrictions so close to the Knicks, Hartenstein would earn $30 more million than the Knicks could pay him by moving to OKC. Rumors have emerged that maybe this is due to OG Anunoby his contract size, but in full fairness, the Knicks had to value OG for their system more than Hartenstein, and getting priced out is part of the business. Make no mistake though, this sent the Knicks into a quiet panic of sorts. With their only true center consistently injured in Mitchell Robinson, Leon started making calls in the background. The rumored names to be looking at were Nick Richards, Jonas Valanciunas, they were being floated around, and Walker Kessler, who Utah, in typical Danny H fashion, reportedly wanted 2 first-round picks for. To which the Knicks had, remember? They had a bunch of picks, but they chose to spend them in a different way, as no one expected the trade announcement that would come. The Nets, convinced to go into a fire sale, traded Mikal Bridges to the Knicks, with the only notable player outgoing in Bojan Bogdanovic, as this trade was really mainly about the picks. And there it was, all those assets Leon was saving up for this. 6 first-round picks heading to Brooklyn, although all predicted to be late lottery, it's quite the haul for the crosstown rivals. Perfect fit next to his former college teammate in Brunson and Hart and DiVincenzo to strengthen the Nova Knicks core, but also to have the defensive capability next to OG. It looked as the Knicks would cause a lot of teams problems, especially Boston Stars and Tatum and Brown. As good as it was, the Knicks still lacked their center. Some smaller moves would follow, bringing in former Mikal Bridges teammates from Phoenix in the serviceable campaign as point guard and testing out sharpshooter Landry Shamet. The roster, however, did look set. Although the Knicks were still depleted at center, there were constant talks of Julius Randle's versatility, maybe playing center in a small ball lineup, or maybe there was going to be some future move at the deadline for a better backup 5. But 4 days before training camp, Rose made his final blockbuster, and no one believed it or saw it coming, and especially no one envisioned how he pulled it off. After years of rumors, the Knicks would finally acquire Karl-Anthony Towns for Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. Well, mainly those two, but let's dive into it. And this is probably the best bit of work from Rose and his team. The crescendo of trades that has built up over the last 5 years. You see, the Knicks were tied in cap. Facilitating a cap trade will require some clever salary management in order to avoid the second apron. Getting a third team in to help facilitate some cap balancing isn't new in this league, but how the Knicks did it is. In the current CBA, with cap apron rules, teams cannot combine multiple minimum contracts to help facilitate a trade eligibility, thus putting the Knicks in a difficult spot to meet the incoming salary the Cat has, and thus the Knicks loophole was born. Leon and his team, being the savvy bunch they are, had the rights from the previous season to the likes of Charlie Brown Jr., Daquan Jeffries, and Dwayne Washington Jr. This allowed them to sign and trade these minimum guys and pay each of their minimum contracts in the trade, outgoing $1 extra. So for the price of $3 extra, they were not on a minimum deal, thus allowing them to be included in the trade and meet the requirements to sweeten the deal for the Hornets. The Hornets would also take on the salary the Knicks opted to send them, because the Knicks would send them back the max cash allowed by the league to total $7.2 million, which, when you put that together, gives the Hornets an easy $400K profit, along with a couple of second rounders to boot. All this was possible because of the savvy trades for the future picks and saving on the descending contracts of Brunson, Mitchell, and the resigning of Precious previously. In short, the Hornets get picks and the end of the bench guys get their guaranteed cash. Wolves get some long-term money in Cat's deal off their books with quality replacement players in Randle and DiVincenzo, and the Knicks get their center and number 2 star next to Brunson in Cat. Everyone wins, except Adam Silver's rules with this loophole that the Knicks found. I do wonder if we'll see any other NBA teams in the future use this loophole, or will we see the NBA quickly try and write this out of the CBA almost immediately? Let me know what you think. What's going to go on here? So now we're heading into the 2025 season with the media labeling the Knicks as contenders for the first time since the Ewing years. Despite the Knicks for clicks that has arisen in broadcasting space over the last couple of years, it would be hard pressed to find anyone that believed even 2 years ago the Knicks would be rolling out a starting 5 of Brunson, Bridges, Hart, Anunoby, and Towns with what they had at the time. Rose's rebuild was a masterclass in patience, calculated risk-taking, and maintaining flexibility. He resisted the urge to mortgage the future for quick fixes and instead built a team designed to last. Knicks fans, for the first time in decades, have something real to cheer for, whether quietly or, in their case, not so quietly. Even the biggest Knick haters can't deny that Rose has done an excellent job. But what did you think? Is Rose finished with his trades this season? How far do you think this Knicks team will go? And which move, upon reflection, do you think was the most important? Personally, I really enjoyed the Josh Hart move. He really did solidify the culture of the team when you look at it. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to stay updated on NBA, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like the video, and leave a comment with your thoughts on this rebuild. We'll be back with more updates, analysis, and all things NBA. Thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully see you next time.